What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another weather forecast here by Asian Weather Forecast. And I do apologize for the inconsistent with my videos this week here. I do really apologize. First of all, I had a lot of tests this week with EOCs and all that. And then as well as my sister's birthday, we kind of celebrated 1 or 2 days. So I was very, very busy. But I'm going to be back to my regular schedule from now on, hopefully. There may be a few days where I can't post because I'm still going to have a few other big tests. But overall, I'm going to be back to my normal schedule. And yeah, I'm glad to be back here. But in this video, we're going to be looking at the threat for some more widespread severe weather this weekend and as well into early next week here across portions of the south central portion of Dixie Valley and as far as portions of the Ohio Valley. So May is already showing some severe weather to move as far north as those regions here. But before we get into the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and the bell icon. But without further ado, let's get into the forecast. So here's a look now at the day 2 outlook. So we already do have a threat for some severe weather across portions of western Dixie Valley and the south central United States here. We do have a level 2 slight risk here at a level out of 5 levels here. You can kind of see it's for portions of Mississippi there, western Alabama, much of Louisiana, southeastern Texas, and as well portions of Tennessee here. So this slight includes around 8.3 million people, including big cities like Memphis, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Jackson, and Metairie, and as well a very widespread marginal across this region with a second marginal for portions of the Western Plains, and this includes around 11 million people, including Houston, Shreveport, Mobile, Little Rock, and Pasadena, Texas here. So we're going to be seeing a little bit on the lower threat for tornadoes here. We're not going to be seeing extremely favorable conditions for tornadoes. It's going to be mainly a wind and hail threat. So we still do have a widespread 2%, including just around 7.4 million people. That's going to be including big cities like New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Little Rock, Jackson, and Metairie. But again, it's going to be really very small chance for having any tornadoes for day 2, which will be May 2nd. Of course, getting throughout the day throughout May 2nd tomorrow here, but I'm definitely not going to stream on this because I just don't see the need into streaming this event here. We do have a 15% chance non-hatched or severe risk here for winds, and it's going to be exactly highlighting that slight risk. So again, 8.2 million people, Louisiana, Mississippi there, western Alabama, southwestern Tennessee, and southeastern Texas. In that yellow areas, you guys are really watching out for a slight risk for some pretty severe winds. And as well, we do have, again, the same risk there for that hail in those areas where we have a highlighted slight risk with the pretty widespread 2 areas of 5%. Let's actually go to day 1 here because we actually are going to see some small amounts of severe weather today. And we do have a pretty widespread marginal risk here across portions of Texas and Louisiana. Around 19 million people, including Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, and Corpus Christi. And we're going to be seeing a little bit of the lower threat for tornadoes, 2%, of course. And then we're going to be seeing a little bit lower threat on the wind and hail. So very minimal day today for severe weather, but still going to be seeing some strong storms here. And here's now a look at the day 3 outlook. We have a very, very widespread slight risk here. And that's going to be including much of the Ohio Valley into portions of the Tornado Alley region. So we actually do have 21 million people in this slight risk here, including Indianapolis, Memphis, Nashville, Tulsa, and St. Louis here. So it's actually a lot more to the north than what we've seen with our past slight risk. I mean, it's getting into areas like Indianapolis, getting into areas like Dayton, Ohio, and to areas like Louisville, Cincinnati. You guys are now under that slight risk there. So it's definitely starting to see this May pattern here where the severe weather is getting far out of Dixie Valley and becoming very widespread here now as well to portions of Tornado Alley there in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas. And then a very widespread margin, including around 24.5 million people, including all the way from the Dallas region, DFW, to portions there, all the way to areas like Columbus, Ohio, Charleston, West Virginia. So very widespread severe weather risk, and as well a very widespread 15% chance hatched and severe risk. So we're really going to be watching out whether we can have an enhanced risk within this 15% chance significant severe risk. So we do have around 10 million people in this 10%, in this 15% hatched risk, including St. Louis, Louisville, Little Rock, Springfield, and Evansville, Indiana. And then in general, we have a pretty widespread 15% non-hatched, including areas like Indianapolis, Memphis, Nashville, Tulsa, and basically that's really it. And then another very widespread marginal, of course, in that wind threat for 5%, for the 5% in general. This is not wind. This is just in general 5% for severe weather, and that's of course including 24 million people. So really watching out for some pretty significant severe weather, at least according to the SPC, with a 15% chance of hatch and severe right here, and possibly maybe we'll see if there's a probability for an enhanced risk. You got to keep a very close eye on that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the models. So here's now a look at the next few hours here. So we're going to start seeing these storms popping off across portions, specifically central Texas here. Good see some pretty good storms in our Galveston, possibly some good storms there. Later on in the day here in the early afternoon for areas like San Antonio, some pretty good storms as well near Austin. So in general, we're going to be seeing some pretty strong storms across the region. Like I did say, not going to be a big severe risk. We could just maybe see some gusty winds and maybe some small hail, but we're not looking at the conditions to support very large hail, gorilla sized hail like we saw earlier this week here. So again, we could maybe see some pretty intense storms for some areas like Austin, possibly maybe some scattered storms that could bring in some heavy downpours or DFW. But in general, it's going to just be some severe storms here and possibly in general some pretty good rain. But let's now go ahead and take a look now into tomorrow morning. That's when those storms are going to start getting pretty severe for specifically the wind and hail threats. So looking at some pretty good storms there in Louisiana and Mississippi, and this is tomorrow morning again where we have the slight risk. As we get tomorrow late morning, so we're going to continue to increase in strength there across southwestern and south central Mississippi, and possibly some pretty intense storms on the backside where we've seen those more favorable conditions, including Cape Valleys across portions of Texas and Arkansas. But let's now go later into tomorrow early afternoon. Possibly some pretty intense, maybe discrete cells across Arkansas and Texas and even portions of Louisiana. And then on the front side, I'm going to be seeing mainly a big wind and flooding threat across Mississippi, western Alabama, and southeastern Louisiana. Oops, I did not want to do that. By 7 o'clock here, many of the storms will kind of make their way towards Mississippi and Alabama. And let's now go ahead and take a look at this here in the deep south. So let's go ahead and look at what we're going to be seeing with these storms here. On the 12Z across these areas, and again, they get pretty severe across Mississippi, Louisiana, there into Alabama. As we go later into the evening hours, and possibly by 7, 8 o'clock, we could be seeing some pretty darn heavy rain falls there across southwestern Alabama, south central, and kind of right on the coast there of Mississippi, and southeastern Louisiana. So we can really watch out possibly for some really gusty winds within these regions. Again, it does not look like we're going to be seeing any tornado producing supercells tomorrow, but again, we can't rule out the possibility for at least 1 or 2 tornadoes, because again, it's still a pretty widespread 2% chance, so we really can't rule out the possibility for that here. But let's now go ahead and take a look at the Europeans so we can see what's going to happen on day 3, since the HRR NAM do not go that far out just yet. So looking at tomorrow morning here, of course, there's severe storms across Louisiana and the south central in general. Let's now go a little bit later now into portions now into May 3rd. And May 3rd, possibly seeing some pretty good storms there across, like I did say, the Ohio Valley and portions of the, I guess, Tennessee and Kentucky Valley. And it's going to be May 3rd. It's going to be, that's going to be Monday morning here. But let's now go later on now into Monday evening and later afternoon. We're seeing another wave of some pretty intense storms there across the Midwest and across the Mississippi River Basin. And it's going to bring some pretty intense storms here into the evening and almost dusk hours there for Kentucky. So we're going to be seeing some 2 waves, some pretty intense storms, some severe storms in the morning hours of Monday, and then later on into the evening hours of Monday here. And I don't want to keep moving my screen. I do apologize for that. And then I continue to move down now into Tuesday morning here into May 4th. We're seeing some more severe storms there across portions of Kentucky, Tennessee, and of course that's why we have the edge of the slight risk going as far southwest as portions of the Ozarks. We will be seeing some pretty intense storms here overnight into Tuesday morning here across Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri here. So we're seeing kind of a pretty widespread area of some pretty severe storms from areas like Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, to portions of Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas here. Again, does not look like a big tornado threat, at least for this weekend here, early next week, but still going to be seeing some pretty widespread severe weather. But let's now go ahead and check a look at the Cape Valleys we have in place here for later today. So within the next I think 2 hours or so, we're going to be seeing some very low Cape Valleys. The, I guess, highest Cape Valleys will be kind of just set off the coast there with 1,300, 1,400 there, and nearly 2,000 there in the Gulf of Mexico. But across Texas overall, in the next few hours, very low Cape Valleys, but that will change a little bit as we go into the evening hours. Going to be seeing some pretty intense storms across Texas today, and we're going to be seeing some I guess rising numbers here up to 1400, 1500 on Cape values. So we won't be seeing, I guess, enough for severe weather development, but we're not going to be seeing the Cape values to be high enough to create big, large hail or tornado threats. But as we go down to tomorrow, of course, we're going to be seeing some pretty intense storms into the morning hours across southeastern Mississippi there, and portions there of southeastern Louisiana. Some pretty good Cape values over there, up to the mid 2000s as well. Some higher numbers across Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, with some mid thousands there. As we now get into the afternoon hours, we're going to be seeing a lot more favorable conditions for some severe weather, specifically there for Louisiana and the coast of Mississippi. We're going to get nearly 3,000. Actually, we're going to get over 3,000 joules per kilogram there across that region. And then we're seeing anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram there across portions of Louisiana there. And then, of course, we're going to get some pretty good Cape values there across central Texas, getting up to 5,000 joules per kilogram tomorrow evening. But, of course, by that time, we really won't be seeing any severe weather for that area. But, of course, in general, we're not going to be seeing anything too crazy on Cape values, although we're going to be seeing some really warm temperatures, etc. We're just not going to be seeing all the ingredients that bring in those higher Cape values in general here. But let's go ahead and check a look now at the K index for the probability in general to see some severe weather. And we're going to be seeing some decent numbers here. Let's go ahead and check a look. We're going to be seeing some mid-30s there across central and northern Texas, and some widespread 40s across portions of south central Texas. And that's going to be the more favorable area for the next few hours. As we go later into tomorrow, into this evening here, those numbers will rise as we go to the north here with some more favorable conditions with the raising Cape values. So overall, we're going to be seeing some favorable conditions for severe weather across Texas today, but of course, they really won't bring in extreme hail, winds, or a tornado threat. But let's not go for tomorrow. We're going to be seeing a pretty potent threat, of course, across portions of western Dixie Valley. Some decent numbers, some mid-30s, possibly some lower 30s, nothing too crazy. We may get highest numbers near 39, 38, even near 41 there, and across portions of Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana for tomorrow evening, which is going to be, I guess, the more favorable area for severe weather. We not go as far now as portions of May 3rd. Some pretty good conditions there across portions of the Kentucky and Tennessee Valley there, with some mid-30s, and later on into basically Monday morning, when those conditions will bring in some pretty good severe weather, we're going to be seeing in the high 30s for that region here. But let's now go ahead and check looking at the Supercell composite parameter for the next few days, I guess, for portions of the Dixie Valley region and South Central. As we go throughout today, we're going to be seeing some very low numbers or chances for supercells, like only a 3 or 4 is going to be our highest numbers across Texas today. So overall, very low numbers. And let's now go ahead and check look now tomorrow. We're seeing a little bit higher numbers, getting into the mid, I guess the lower double digits there, 10, maybe 11. We may get as high as possibly a 15 or 16 here. And the reason why we're going to get some really high numbers across Texas tomorrow, like 30s and all that, is because of how high the Cape values are going to be. But of course, we're not going to be seeing any rain or severe weather tomorrow across Texas. So these numbers don't mean anything. So you're going to be seeing a 40, but of course that really won't do anything. I guess the more reasonable numbers will be the single digits and double digits, that possibly as high as maybe a 15 or 16 across portions of the Gulf Coast tomorrow. We're going to be seeing maybe some few weaker, possibly I'd say maybe elevated based supercells tomorrow, wind and hail, but really overall, again, very low tornado threat. And let's now go ahead and check a look now at the 0 to 6 kilometers share, the difference between the surface to 6 kilometers, and boy, it's going to be really high. So you're really going to be seeing a pretty unstable atmosphere and a ton of shear across portions of central Texas today. Going to get up to possibly as high as 60 knots there. As we go to tomorrow, of course, some pretty good shear tomorrow across the day here, across Louisiana, Mississippi there, Alabama, Texas, exactly where we'll be watching for some severe weather. They're going to get as high as possibly the mid-60s in the knots range there, and some higher amounts of shear there, kind of right there near southeastern Louisiana and portions there of south and central Mississippi. So pretty good, some pretty dark conditions there, pretty favorable conditions there for shear-wise. That's going to allow for that pretty widespread area of hail and winds, but overall, pretty low threat for extreme severe weather. Let's now go ahead and last but not least look at the significant tornado parameter. Of course, very low number. It's going to get maybe as high as a 2 for a portion of Texas, but again, very, very low threat. But as we now go to tomorrow morning here, that I guess a threat for tornadoes will, I guess, increase slightly and get possibly up to as high as 6 there for south central coast there of Louisiana, and some widespread 1s to 4s as we go into the noon hours, and as we go later on into the early mid afternoon, going to get as possibly near 6 there. But and we've seen those higher numbers now across portions of South Central and the Gulf Coast there of Mississippi. If anything, our best chance for tornadoes tomorrow will be across southeastern Louisiana and south central Mississippi based on the conditions. But of course, very, very low threat. But you're going to be seeing a dramatic increase in numbers here across Texas tomorrow. There for the STP value is going to get as high as a 15. But again, that's not going to mean anything because just conditions are so favorable. However, we're not going to be seeing any severe weather in the area. All that severe weather will make its way towards the east here. We're seeing such high K values, up to 5,000 joules per kilogram, that the both supercell composite and significant parameter numbers are very, very high. However, they're not considering that we're seeing some very low K values. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.